How is that for official and professional, Adrian? My
Very nice.
man.
Very nice. I should have dressed up for this.
I can't believe it. And you're in a Texas hoodie of all things. Where's
Well,
it's hockey season, man. What are you doing?
it's funny. I have an Oilers hoodie, and this thing is absolutely just so ratty. Like it's just disgusting. I haven't washed it in a couple of years, right? So I kind of bring it
As
up.
you do.
Yeah, I bring up for playoffs and stuff like that, and then the dog chewed on the string and all that. So yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
But actually, it's
I
funny.
get it.
So but as for the Texans, my wife got into she got into NFL last season, and then
Okay.
actually the last 2 seasons. So she's been bugging me to pick a team, and so at the end of the season, I just like thought, okay, I'll pick a team, and I just like thought, oh, let's go with the Texans, and right, because no one seems to care about the Texans for some
Yeah.
reason. If I feel
Yeah.
that way, and yeah, so I like the logo too. The logo's pretty cool.
It is. It's
Yeah,
nice. Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah, I unfortunately am a Cincinnati Bengals fan. And I
oh
say unfortunately because like they keep every year they say it's our year, we've got the pieces, and then
yeah,
we
yeah.
just don't. So we at least I saw them play in a Super Bowl in my lifetime, and that's a
hmm
big deal. So
No,
we're
I
getting
know.
way ahead of everything. Let me back up just for a second and say that if you didn't know where you ended up, you're currently watching the Long Box Punk. That's me. I'm Chris. And I am a fan of punk rock music and comic books and talking about both of those things with all sorts of industry creatives, such as my guest this evening. That guy is Adriean Koleric, nice enough to join me. Thanks, dude, for joining for the official first live video stream of the channel. It's
I'm honored. Absolutely
it's
honored.
great.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
forever going to be a hook in your closet that you can hang your hat on. Of I was the first.
Are we keeping this clean? How PG are we going here? I don't know what.
We can just have fun. I
Okay,
don't.
I'm not
Yeah,
gonna I'm not
this
gonna
is
go
a
full
safe
sailor mode,
space.
but
Yeah. We don't need
yeah.
to tear anybody down because there's enough negativity outside of comics, and so I don't understand the people that just like to take dumps on all of the people that are working really hard. Like I don't get that.
Oh my lord,
So
what a week, right? Yeah, that's
yeah.
yeah, pretty heavy topic. I just honestly I completely stayed away from that whole bit. Did not
Yeah.
chime in when it first started and all that. And I talked to friends like just kind of like in private and all that. And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
And I
just
feel like that's the setting to do that in is like in private
mhm,
because, reading this stuff and even reading any of the articles or any of the
mhm,
testimonies as they were, or anything like that, it was
yeah,
like, I'm still only getting half of the story. And
yeah,
like, and it's always through a filter. And I've worked in broadcasting long enough at this point that I know that there's no such thing as truly neutral. So I never know like what
yeah.
to believe, what not to believe, and I definitely am never going to weigh in on anything ever like that. So
No, no. My only comment, I guess, like towards that whole thing is like uh, matters like that should be kept private.
mhm,
It should be kept private between the parties, and if it involves any criminal type whatever, then you discreetly go to the police and you do your what. You just basically
yeah,
just keep it out of the public forum, because really, I mean, everyone's just looking for a train wreck to hop on, and
yeah,
it's never constructive. It's never
right,
constructive, so it's sad. It's the whole thing is absolutely sad, and
yeah,
it bums me out as a creator, because like like I said, I don't know what's real, what's not real. All I know is that I get bummed out when a creative goes away, way too early, because
yeah,
they're just it just bums me out, right? So
yep, yep.
yeah,
So instead of staying bummed out,
yeah, okay,
let's turn this ship around. See, this is what
okay,
happens when you're live.
wow.
We can just we end up places that we did not expect to end up.
Oh my lord.
So, all right. So I know who you are.
Mhm.
You have been gracious enough to share a lot of your work with me, which I super appreciate. And honestly, like, was kind of part of the reason that I wanted to start this show was to talk about people and with people like you and your comics, to just like in some weird, tiny, little, minuscule, obscure corner of the internet, just have my voice like trying to raise up people that aren't with the big two.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of my goal. I've talked to a couple folks that have Kickstarters, and you are the same. You have a successfully funded in under what, 4 hours?
Yeah,
Kicks.
something like that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's crazy.
I mean, realistically, I didn't have a big number to hit, right? I had 1,500 Canadian,
Sure.
right? So I don't know, what is that, like $85 US?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
um, yeah. So it was, yeah, it was nice. It was nice, right? I was originally gonna go like with like a 2 week window, like a 2 week
Hmm.
Kickstarter, keep it whatever. But for
Yeah.
some reason, I picked the full 30 days. I'm kind of regretting it now because I just,
Mhm.
I don't know if you've ever run it like a Kickstarter, but
I
it's like
haven't.
absolutely grinding. It's grinding, especially when you hit like day like 16, 17, 18, like the dog days, right? And it's like
Yeah.
you're tired of yourself. I'm sure everybody is tired of you, and you've lost about a dozen followers. it's just, it's
Yeah.
so horrible. It's horrible, but it's a necessary evil, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
It's that's a very common thing that I've heard from other creators, like both on the show and outside of and before this, of people saying like, man, it just gets to a point where you're like, "Ah, do they really want to hear me again? Like,
Oh,
like I know I need to get this funded, and like unfortunately this is the easiest way to get the word out to people,
oh,
but
yeah.
also like you just don't want to be beating the dead horse like over and over and over and
No,
over.
it's horrible. You got to have a bit of a thick skin to do this, right? It's like even
Yeah.
today, I woke up and I was at like 54 backers, and it's like that did not move at all up until like the end of the workday, and I was just like, I was going mad. I was slowly going mad. I just put out I just tweeted out like begging people like to like, like
Give
I
me
have
your 55.
you know what? And I have like my PDFs, my digital copies are only $1, right? And
That's
I was like,
crazy.
I was
Yeah.
begging someone to spend $1 just to get me to like to 55 because just yeah. So anyway, and it's only day two. I can imagine what I'm gonna be like this time next week, right?
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to this being over. I really am already, So
Yeah.
and I wasn't gonna do a Kickstarter at first. I was just gonna like print, put it on just put it up on a shop and just sell it that way, right? Little by little. But
Yeah. And now here you are, and
here I
you've
am.
got over 54 backers that you're going to be able to get your book out to.
I think I'm at
Um,
59. Yeah,
nice.
59. So there we go. Yeah.
There you go. Picked up 10% more. Let's go.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So when I was on your Kickstarter,
Hmm.
um I saw the add-ons which I had to grab.
Yeah.
Uh but tell me like what are those add-ons, cuz apparently I'm struggling to find it right now. Cuz I was not prepared to do that.
No,
But
that's okay.
yeah, tell me. So there's three covers of one book that you didn't write, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So okay. So part of the add-ons, like you can get like single issues of the sitter in the three covers if you want to order extra copies. But then also I got so Metalhead Samurai, which is a book done by an artist and writer named Dylan Corbisser. And so Dylan Corbisser has done about 5 covers for me.
Okay.
4 of them with my last series Jacoby, and then he did a variant cover for the sitter. And I'm also co-writing a book called S and a Few Tales that's going to be coming out like I think like next year. So
Okay.
so basically he's a collaborator for the last few
Yeah.
years. So anyway, so Dylan had last year Metalhead Samurai Kickstarter, which it funded. He got his book out, and yeah, I just thought as add-on, it'd be kind of nice to sort of offer that to some fresh eyes and
Yeah.
offer that for people. And then people have been picking it up, which is really cool because I love that book. Dylan's like a crazy good talent, and yeah, it'll make you a fan right away.
Cool. I mean, I read the synopsis and I was like, I have to get this. Like, I have to.
Yeah,
I know nothing about any of this. I figured
people.
he must have been a collaborator to have a book that's not directly yours
Mhm.
yet, like included. So I was like, he has to be connected somehow. So he's probably a righteous guy anyway.
Yeah,
So I'll
yeah.
get it. And but I'm glad that uh, I could ask you about it because yeah, I just like I had no idea. Now I'm looking forward to getting it as much as getting my hands on a physical copy
Yeah, you're gonna
of the
love it.
sitter from him. So
Yeah, and yeah, Dylan's like a hardcore metalhead too, right? So,
nice.
and you know his fan base too. Like when he was set up at the Edmonton Expo last year, you know, you could just tell like you know his clientele are just you know within that community,
Yeah.
and you know they get generally excited when they see his book. So yeah, he's Dylan's one of those guys that I just know that he's just on the cusp. You know what I mean? Of just like
Yeah.
getting that one book or getting brought onto like you know like an image book or something, you know, like
Yeah.
it's going to happen with him, and I'm looking forward to that.
That's cool. So how did you initially find him to have him do a variant cover for you?
So when I was first coming up with the idea of doing my first comic Dracovi, which was like 2019, um a lot of humming and hawing. Should I do this and how am I going to do this? Anyway, so I was at one of the comic book shops in town, and there was a postcard for Metalhead Samurai. He did an earlier version of it, and I just kind of looked at it, and the cover was fantastic. The synopsis was brilliant, and then I found out that he was here in Edmonton, where
Oh,
I am.
okay.
Like he's a local, which kind of blew
Yeah.
my mind because you know, getting back into the comic scene, I never really gave much thought to actually, you know, creators in Edmonton for some reason.
Yeah.
There's lots, right? And then anyway, so I sent him like a fan email, and which is kind of funny because Dylan's like I'm 49. Dylan's like I don't even know if he's like 30. He's in his 20s actually. And so here I am. I'm sending him fan mail,
Yeah.
and then we just kind of started talking, and then uh I got a copy of his book, loved it, and then that really got me going with my book. And then when I started my Kickstarter for Tricovi self-published, I just said, you know, do you want to do a couple of covers for me? And he was like, yeah, right away, yes, you know,
That's
and
awesome.
then we've been working with each other ever since.
That's cool. Yeah, I love the so I love asking writers and just creatives in general, like how do you find the people that you end up working with? And it's every single story has been different. And like some of
Yeah.
them are like, you just replied to a thing on Twitter and like
Hmm.
now we're collaborators on this is our fourth series. And
Yeah.
and so it like it's as somebody that knows nothing about that process, uh, other than what I've started to ask, because now I'm just curious to
Hmm.
be like, okay, so like I've been reading comics for I'm 30, about to be 38. I don't some year, I'm about to be some age that's not 40 yet.
Yeah.
And so like I've been collecting and reading comics for the better part of 3 decades.
Hmm.
And instead, like I want to take it to the I want to take my relationship with comics to the next step. I don't want to just be a consumer. I want to
Hmm.
start doing something within the industry. And so like hence this thing.
Hmm.
And also like just I want to understand more about how like the business side of things work, because if I were to ever like actually stop just like waffling on my idea and actually like write it down and try and put pen to paper and figure out like how to find an artist because I can't draw for anything,
Yeah. Yeah.
like how to figure all that stuff out. And so part of me is also like taking all of these little notes from people and just
Hmm.
like putting them in my Rolodex for some future time when I have nothing else going on
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
maybe give it a go. But so you've got, so you mentioned Chakrovi.
Yeah.
Check out that fancy little scroller at the
Look at
bottom
that,
there.
eh?
Look
Nice.
at, we're so professional on this
Oh,
channel.
and you're doing this live. Good for you.
um, so tell me about the sitter. Like where I want to know where the idea came from because it feels very fresh and very unique, which is part of the reason that I immediately just fell in love with this book.
So the sitter was, oh boy, it almost feels like a reaction to being done with a series with a publisher. So Shikobi, my 5 issue series was with Scout Comics, which by the way I had
Mhm.
a great relationship with, really no complaints, whatever. But I wanted to kind of like start getting a little more, I don't know, a little more really indie, you know, like just
Yeah,
start like exploring things and getting a little more not grittier, but a little more raunchier, a little more freer. I want to have a little more fun, I guess, right? From I want to
yeah,
use whatever I learned from my first series and bring it into this. And so it really started with so the sitter, you know, he has like this big block head, right? This big
yeah,
red block head, whatever. that's actually a piece of furniture that I made about like 20 years ago. Because
Really?
I used to do like I used to be like a contemporary furniture
Okay.
designer, and I would do shows and stuff like that. So this is like it was a drawer unit. So that middle part would pull out and it'd be a drawer. Anyway,
Okay.
so I did a bunch of digital collages, right, of this large character. I would put him like in landscape settings and all that, right? That was about 15 years ago. And so I always kind of held on to that. And then when I was done Tricoving, I was thinking for my next piece, I just thought right away of the series that I did, and then just kind of built it from there, and
Hmm.
um, and then just slowly pieced it together. I had one ending that I thought was great, but afterwards I just realized it was complete ass, and so then I figured out a new ending, which completely transformed the whole book.
Yeah.
So now I got this major twist. Um, yeah, so it was a piece by piece thing, and
Okay.
yeah.
Cool. I had no idea that how did you go from contemporary furniture to comics? Like how
Um,
does
so I was always like I'm a kid from like late 80s, early 90s, right? Early 90s, I was in high school and that. So I love comics. Like I love the whole 90s thing, like Rob Liefeld, Tom McFarlane. I was part of that, whatever.
yeah.
And so I actually, it's funny, back then I wanted to be a comic book artist, right? And so when high school finished, I had a choice between going to the Alberta College of Art, which is in Calgary, which is about 3 hours just south of us,
Okay.
uh, or find something here in Edmonton. And so there's nothing like that here in Edmonton. So I picked the closest thing because I was just too chicken shit to go to Calgary. I picked the closest thing, which was like interior design technology. And so I picked that. And then so I got into the whole design world from there. Once I graduated, then I met up with a bunch of industrial designers from the University of Alberta, and then we just kind of got a group going,
Hmm.
started making furniture, and this is like uncomfortable furniture. It's more sculptural stuff, right?
Okay. Yeah.
I think I was wearing a black turtleneck back then too, and the whole,
Sure you were. Yeah.
I was really, I was like a walking IKEA commercial. And
Perfect. Yeah.
anyway, yeah. So and I did that for a few years, and then I got into the vinyl toy designer toy scene.
Hmm. Yeah.
And then I don't know if if you're not familiar with the vinyl toy scene. Basically, it's like established contemporary artists at the time uh, make toys based off characters within their paintings. So
Mhm.
I came across this one artist called Bigfoot One. So he's out of San Francisco, and I came across him, and it was just like a bomb. Like I just like right away, like my love of illustration came back, and then from that point on, I just kind of sort of veered my way from design, and I to a point where I just like completely abandoned it and just got back into producing art. Except for drawing. I avoided drawing forever. So I was doing a lot of digital stuff, right? A lot of digital
Okay.
collage, paper collage,
Yeah.
and that. So and then eventually I kind of slowly worked my way to drawing again. So for a longest time, like hands were mitts. And then, as I kept going, all of a sudden I had fingers, and then fingers
Yeah.
turned into like whatever. And yeah.
Yeah, haven't even gotten to the mitts part. It's you're lucky if they're just like sticks. Like that's it.
Yeah, I had mitts, no eyes, no mouth, nothing, right? It was really, it was kind of, yeah, yeah. It was still pretty good though. I thought it was good at the time, but
There will be a book in like 30 years of the original old Adrien
Oh,
Koleric
yeah.
sketches and illustrations that comes out that people are going to want to pay like $40 for because it's never been published. So
Yeah,
just you wait.
yeah, yeah. I'll be so gone by then. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I'm not too concerned about that. So yeah.
There you go. So as you got back into the illustrating,
Hmm.
I'm curious because your artwork is it's just so energetic. Um and I have a hard time thinking that that's not intentional. So I want to know, like, as you're doing all of your illustration and you're creating all of the, just the abstract asymmetrical page layouts and all of that,
Hmm.
which I freaking love. By the way, like the Watchmen, like 9 panel thing is just that puts me to sleep. Um, it really does. And like the first time I read Watchmen, I was like, this is the book that everybody loses their mind over. Like,
I haven't finished The Watchmen yet, and I've tried so many
yeah,
times.
because
I
you
can't.
keep falling asleep, right?
I
Because
do. I'm
yeah,
horrible that way.
yep.
Yeah, I feel bad, but I'm sorry, but.
Yeah, no,
I don't know.
we can.
Yeah.
This is a safe space. We can do because I feel the
This is
exact
gonna
same
come back
way.
to bite me in the ass. I just know it. I
Oh
just
yeah,
know
there's
it.
going to be
It's
one
coming.
person that's just going to, yeah, and they're going to clip the video and.
Oh, I can't wait. Fine, whatever. Cancel me. That's
So,
okay.
right, it's fine. It's fine. So with your art style, is that is it influenced by really like has that always just been how you like create,
Yeah.
or is there like was like I think I'm getting to or trying to get to what role does music play into it, because it feels like I could see you listening to like thrash punk as you're creating,
Mhm,
and because it's got a very almost graffiti
mhm,
feel to a lot of your artwork, especially with like the splatter overlays and stuff that you put in.
mhm,
And I love that look a lot. And it just feels like it fits perfectly into like this would be what like a punk rock bar would have, just
mhm.
like giant paintings of your panels and your pages up on their walls and behind the bar. Like, is that a connection that I'm reaching for, or
No, no,
is there like
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, because like when I like so in the 80s, and then a bit of the 90s, so we had a pretty good punk scene in Edmonton, and I always and my favorite band was SNFU, and
yeah, okay,
so I always loved like the gig posters. I loved all the art that there's always a member in a punk band that does the artwork, right?
yep,
Or a friend of theirs is in art school and whatever. And I always love the DIY vibe of it.
yeah,
Like I love the cut paste look of it.
yep,
I mean,
yep.
in the 80s, it was all like Reagan themed, big
Everything, yeah,
post. I love that stuff, right? And
yeah,
so that was like that's basically like those are my biggest influences, growing up, and I just it just made me comfortable with how I draw.
yeah,
I never aspired to draw, like the heavy hitters, right, for the big two, and that like I never had interest in trying to like push myself to get to that point of the realism, the corporate illustration, I guess,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And then yeah, and so it was that, and then like when Todd McFarlane, kind of came onto the scene, and then his Spider-Man and whatever, and just his faces, they were just so off from like what was normally given to you, right? Like the
yeah,
big eyes and like the noses and the eyebrows and stuff like that,
yeah.
and so I just fed off of that, right? And guys like that, just like I said, it just made me comfortable with how I drew. And like, to be honest, the stuff I'm doing now, I bet you if I found some high school sketches, it wouldn't be that far off.
That's cool. Yeah,
Maybe a little more refined, I hope, but to be honest, it's nothing to it's not a huge leap.
sure. That's cool. So, what about the like the writing process? Because you do just about everything for the sitter, right? Except
Yeah.
for did you do the lettering as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How
Yeah. The
does
whole
how does that work? Like, how do you do all of it at the same time, or
um
do you?
Yeah, so I kind of do. Well, the lettering is the very last thing that I do. And
Okay.
then the lettering was like the one thing I was like most afraid of, right? Because lettering can kill a book, right? So
Yeah.
watched like videos, read articles, blah, 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 and then kind of figured out to the point where it's like, I'm happy with the lettering I do. I don't think it, it just looks natural with the artwork and that. And I used to show it to people like, does this look okay? Can you read this? Like, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. So anyway, but as for the writing and that, um, so basically, as I kind of sort of write and draw at the same time. So I'll have like the skeleton of the script. I'll have like beginning, middle, and ends,
Yeah.
and then I'll start drawing because usually I have enough to start drawing. And then as I go, then I'll kind of fill in parts in the script, and then I'll kind of
Okay.
jump back and forth to sketch. So it's just that it's a two-part thing. I've never like done like a well, actually I have, sorry, for Jacoby, because I'm working with an editor.
Ooh.
I would finish the script, you know, for 3, 4, and 5, issues 3, 4, 5, I would have a full script done, which was fantastic actually, made things a lot easier, right?
Yeah.
But the sitter, I just kind of did both at the same time. And then the book I'm working on now, is same thing as well. I'm just kind of like as
Just
I go.
going as you.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. And the sitter is what issue one of three, right?
Yeah, originally I was gonna go with a standalone, just a one shot, but
Mhm.
as I went, I saw there was a good story that I could flesh out, and I wanted to tie it in to my Trakovi universe, right? So
Yeah.
eventually I'll kind of have those two marry up at some point.
Okay.
And then yeah, and then I just kind of like I just had right away this like opening sequence for issue 2 in my head, and I thought that's really good. And so yeah, so I want to do 3 issues. I'm not gonna do 5 issues again because that's a lot,
Yeah.
and it's really hard to get people to stick around for 5 issues. 2 issues is hard.
Sure.
So three, I'll give it a shot, right? I think I can do it. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Well, I gotta say I think my favorite scene in the sitter, and it doesn't give anything away, but it's when they're at the comic shop and the guy
Mhm.
comes in with this box. He's like, "Do you guys buy comics?" They're like, well, what do you have? And he's like, oh, a bunch of 90. And they're like, they just boo him out of the store. I've
Yeah.
been in my local comic shop when that guy walks in, they're like, you guys buying comics? What's up, man? And it's always that guy.
I've
So
been there
we,
too. I've seen it too, where this guy walked in with like, yeah, a bunch of these like whatever these '90s whatever, and he thought he
yeah,
was gonna like cash in, and the guy's like,
yeah,
no. And it's funny.
I don't want
One
that.
of the guys who he reads my stuff, and he also shops at the same shop I go to, Comic Fever. And so he read the Sitter, like just a advanced copy as well, and he commented on that exact same scene where he said he was in the shop once, and this guy comes in, same thing. He's trying to sell these like '90s whatever, and the owner Lee, he's like an older guy. He goes, he goes, I got so many of these, they're gonna line my coffin with them. That was it. This guy was, yeah, that was it. Just gone,
To me,
gone
like,
from there.
oh,
Yeah.
okay,
What's
all
funny? So
right.
this is kind of funny. So I submitted the sitter to 3 publishers, to Mad
Mhm.
Cave, which I got my rejection letter today. So Mad
Okay.
Cave's out. I
Yep.
sent it to Dark Horse. I sent it to Image, and after I sent it to Image, I forgot that when the dude's box gets spilled, it's like Image books.
It's all the image cut. Yeah.
so so I think I've kind of washed my head of like any thoughts of like Image.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like, or maybe they'll be like, "Huh, this guy's
Oh,
ballsy," right? You know what I mean? So
this guy's a fan. He knows our young bloodline. That's it.
yeah, I don't know. So anyway, well, I feel bad at first because listen, I don't like, one thing I'll never do is I'll try to not criticize other creators, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter
Yeah.
what tier they're at, right? I might have an opinion here and there, but I'll try not to like diss anybody, right? Because I know what it's like, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that one I don't know. I'm gonna fuck that. Sorry. I'm gonna regret that. I don't know why, but we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I'm expecting Image just to kind of send their little like thank you for whatever, but it's not for
Yeah.
us. You know.
Yeah. So I don't how does that work? So you said your first series, Tricovia was your first series like ever?
Mhm. Yeah.
Seriously, that's
Yeah. First.
crazy.
Yeah. First.
Like
Yeah.
how did you get that with Scout with it being your first? Like I would have assumed that they would have been like, oh, let's see your whole portfolio of like what you've done, and
No,
then
it just like what I wrote the 2 issues. Actually, I wrote it as one big issue, and then I kind of split into two. I did the Kickstarter. Kickstarter raised 10 grand Canadian. Uh, and I don't want to make it sound too big, but anyway,
right,
10 grand
$7.
Canadian.
Yep, got
Yeah, yeah.
it.
And then it was just, honest to God, it was a joke that I submitted. So I went to Scout's website, and I like Scout. I like some of the titles that they had,
Mhm.
right? And
Yep.
so I thought, and that was the only one I submitted to. I'm like, I'm gonna submit to these guys. And then they had like how this big procedure, how you got to submit this and that. I just sent him like the PDF and just kind of said, hey, this is my book. That's it, right? And
Yeah.
so I kind of sort of did it half-ass, and then yeah, and then like literally like a couple months later, I did a follow-up, and they're like, yeah, we're still thinking about it. We'll get back to you, and then just turned into this whole, we'll get back to you, and then we're gonna go for it. And that was it.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
That's awesome. Good for you.
yeah,
Yeah,
no,
'cause
thank you. Yeah, it's cool.
I don't feel like that's a common experience. I feel like there's a lot of grinding and submitting and rejection letter and submitting and reject and then finally just like, oh, I'll just do it myself, like whatever. And
Listen, you know
it's so
what? One thing I'm learning, and then talking with other creators, and because I'm like now what 5 years into the comic thing, right? So
Yeah.
it's luck of the draw. It's luck of the
It's
draw,
crazy.
and it's just finding one person, one editor, or one whatever to like it. That's all it is, one person, and then that one person will, hopefully it will like enough that they'll fight for you, right? Which is what happened
Yeah.
with me at Scout, because there was some division there about whether to pick up the book, because
Mhm.
some people were worried about, with Chirkovy, because Chirkovy starts off with basically blowing up a school bus of children, right?
Yeah.
And so people in the Submittal committee, some were wondering, well, how do you redeem this character? Like, what could
Yeah.
we possibly do with this character? And so Brendan Deneen, who's like head of Scout, and he just fought for it, and he said like, no, we're gonna do it. And then that was it. And then I got my editor, Andrea Molinari, and then we just kind of hashed out the story, and we found a redemption ish, and just pieced it together from there.
There it was. And now it's
Yeah,
out in the
yeah,
world and
yeah. It's out in the world, and it's funny too. It, it whatever you okay. I'm sure I'm not the only one. When you get signed, right, to your first publisher, doesn't matter
Mhm.
if it's like the big two or if it's a small press, right? You feel like all of a sudden it's like shit's gonna happen. You feel like, the money's gonna come rolling in, you're gonna
Yeah.
get options, this and that, you get toys made and all that. You think all this is gonna happen. Then you quickly learn no. It's it's
It's not
it's
that.
it's very no, God no. It's very humbling. Um, you really are alone in the process, apart from your editor.
Mm.
Every now and then, you'll talk to somebody, to fill out a form or two. But it's still a very solitary
Hmm.
thing. And then you get your book out, and then you gotta, like, if you're lucky, you'll get a review.
Yeah.
So you get a review, and then it's a bad review, and now you got to deal with a bad review that's put out to everybody in the community, right?
Yep.
And but then you get good reviews too, and all that, and then you got to wait for your next issue to come out, right? So you're at the mercy of like the publisher, for release dates, and then there are times where your book's not out for like 3 months in between issues, and by that time people have moved on, and you get
Yeah.
humble very quickly, right?
Yeah.
Because your book's out today, by this time next week, people are going to forget about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, you just kind of your ego is definitely deflated, right? And you realize too, it's like, you got the big names, right? Like the Tinian or Chip Zdarsky or whoever.
Yeah.
But that's a small, 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 small percentage of people in the comic community, right? I mean, most of it's like, schlubs like me that are just, you know, maybe lucky enough to
Doing
get a
the
small
thing.
press.
Yeah.
And now, the back to self-publishing, right?
Yeah.
And you're just pushing whatever. You're hoping to get, 54 people plus, to like, buy your book.
At
Yeah.
least
But
55. Yeah.
yeah, well, like I said, I checked last, I think I was at 59, so which is good. But what's gonna happen this time tomorrow, I'll still be at 59, and I'll go absolutely bonkers, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's a horrible business, but it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah. So what for you is the like the reason that you keep subjecting yourself to all of that just like stress and anxiety in the process, and like what keeps you, is it to get your story out, is it the like satisfaction of taking the thing out of your brain and then having a physical thing that you can hold on to and be like, yep, that's me, like this is my thing, or like is it something
Yeah.
totally different?
Yeah, it's like it's now to the point where it's like a couple things. So one is like, so I got like a small core of they started off as followers when Jacoby first came out, but now they're friends, right?
Hmm.
So Joe and Johnny, they run the How Did We Get Here podcast, and
Okay.
then so they got a small group, within their group, and so they've been supporting me from the beginning. And so I find now it's like I kind of enjoy writing stories for them,
Hmm.
like for like the 5 or 6, friends in that group.
Yeah.
But also too, knowing that I know now how to put a book out. I know how to write a book, how to lay out a book, right? So I know what to do. I know the mechanics, and I just enjoy doing it, and I like, even though like I'm an artist first,
Hmm.
I really like writing. I really like coming up with a story, and trying to find like a style, I guess.
Yeah.
It's just fun because you realize too, like, if you could put out a book, it's an absolute privilege. You've really you've really accomplished a lot. So anyone that's just put out one book, that's a big accomplishment,
Yeah.
and it's just really cool, right? And it's like it doesn't matter if you're signed or not. Just the fact you put out a book, like you're part of a community now, right? And then you get to do
Yeah.
things like this, right? I get to talk to like people like you, and I once in a while I get someone tell me I'm trash, right? So it's just fun, right? Because it's like because you think back, when you're a kid, you used to worship like anybody that made comics, right? Like I
Yeah.
worship like you know, like Ben Edlund who did the Tick, right? Like for the longest
Mhm.
time, I wanted to be him, like I wanted to make the Tick, and now I can make my own Tick. I'm actually doing a Tick bootleg, right? That I'm, you
Yeah.
know. So anyway, yeah, it's just fun. It's fun. Once it gets in your veins, it gets in your veins, and it's really
Yeah.
hard to flush out.
That makes sense. Yeah, in talking to a buddy of mine is an editor for one of the smaller publishing companies,
Yeah.
and he was like, "We've talked like I went to college with him,
Mhm.
and he was doing web comics at the time, and I was like, oh man, that's so cool." And he got into lettering and then into editing, and
Yeah.
now he's like one of the highest people at the company and
Mhm.
involved with like picking up books and all that stuff. And I was talking to him at like a tiny little con that we had in Northern Kentucky,
Mhm.
and he was like, I know we've talked comics before, but like I know you have ideas, like just put them on paper and
Yeah.
like we can get to. And it was like I left feeling like I can do this, and then I
Mhm.
sat down and like stared at a blank page and I was like, I can I I can do this. And it like, and very quickly in talking with some other writers and some people online and everything, it was very much like there's a way more to this than I thought. And yet everybody is always like, yeah, but you just do it. Like you just got to do it and get over
Y
the hump and like
yeah. Do the
just
one. Just get
just do
one.
the thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and you will find a formula that works for you, right? Like you'll draw. Sorry, my cat's doing something. Hey, hey, what is that? Hey. um, yeah. You'll find a formula, right? So for me, like uh I use settings in Edmonton, right?
Mhm.
To like build certain businesses and stuff like that. So I right away got my settings out of the way, so I don't have to do any world building, right? Because my world's already built.
Yeah.
And then in terms of like characters, I just drew on like my family, my people I grew up with, right? You kind of sort of make like a character. Uh, sorry, cat. Oh, come here. All right, just to prove. Yeah, there he is. Yeah,
There he
yeah.
is.
But anyway, yeah. So you draw like for me. So I drew for my family, right? So I grew up in a Slovenian household, right? Like former Yugoslavia, right? So I drew from
Mhm.
that out, and I met enough characters that I have voices like how they sound in my head and
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So like I said, once you figure out, what's comfortable for you, and that's one thing that you gotta always remember, if you're gonna do your first book, is there's no right or wrong way of doing it.
Mm.
So it's like when I was figuring out page layouts, how to do that. Like there was one blog that had a formula. You start off with one panel, 3, 4, 6, 4, 2. What it was like this
Oh
like,
man, yeah.
and I thought, oh my, and I really tried doing this formula, and it just got to a point where it's like, I'm just gonna do what I do. And then once I got out of that out of the way, and I wasted probably a good 6 months trying to like do things a certain way that I thought, So once you get over that hump, how you lay things out and stuff like that. Like I even bought like, like the big pad of whatever paper. It's
Oh,
got the
like the
lines.
comic, the
Yeah,
blue
yeah,
lines
yeah.
and everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I started drawing on that, and that took forever. And I'm like, oh, screw it. So I just drew on like photocopy paper from work, backside of sheets, and I just like scan it, upload to Photoshop, and just kind of draw from there. And that,
Yeah.
and it's worked out. I have done all my books that way. So
So
yeah.
you do
So
both physical and digital.
at first, yeah, at first I started with physical, but I always like end up doing the finished in digital, yeah, physical to digital. And then now I'm at the point now where it's like I just basically open up a tablet, I just do all the sketching right there, and
Oh,
then
cool.
and just start building it up. So yeah, for the environment.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. You're saving so many trees to print books on, and that's why they should back the sitter at the dollar level, which is insane, by the way, that you're doing a digital copy for $1.
I want to try
Canadian
some
of all formulas.
Canadian. I know that's like what 74 cents US. So I just want to try something. I just want to try something different. Like I mean, I could have charged like probably $6, $7 even, right? Just because it's a
Yeah,
38-page book, right?
yeah.
I've seen guys charge $15 for a digital, and people bought it. But
I've
I
paid
was
$15.
yeah, and listen, and you know, there's no right or wrong price, right?
Yeah,
It's like whatever whatever someone will pay for it, that's what it's worth, right?
yeah,
But I want to try something new. Because in my head, I'm thinking too, because like it's really just me on this book, apart from like my editors and a variant cover artist, right? But it's me, right? And so I'm like, well, I don't, it doesn't cost me anything to send an email, right? The book's done. It's digital anyway.
yeah,
So I've already passed around, preview copies. So a buck's a buck, right? And
yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, if I didn't make the goal, that could have been my downfall too, is charging that little. But I don't know. I just like the idea of just getting the book into people's hands. If they like it enough, if they want a physical copy, I'll have a shop set up after the Kickstarter, and they can always buy a copy and then, you know, go from there.
Nice, nice. I like it. I like the just very simple formula that you've got. I love that approach because I have backed. I got an email from Kickstarter last year that was like, "Congratulations, you're a super backer," because
Yeah,
I
yeah,
backed a certain number of projects or
yeah.
something in like a very small window of time, and they were like, "Oh, you're awesome." My wallet, on the other hand, was like limping its way through. Like, oh yeah, I know. Just
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so I have backed Kickstarters before that are very complex, and they
Mhm.
like every single tier has additional things and all this stuff, and everything just kind of comes together. And I think I kind of just like the very simple approach that you're taking. Like, hey, I have a book and like I have some covers that are cool.
Yep,
And so if you want those, you can get those. And if you want the regular cover, like that's cool too. But
yep.
like I like the book. And it almost to me, and again, this isn't a knock on anybody that does all the complex stuff because everybody again has their own approach. But
Yeah,
to just have the book, it's like you're relying on that book to sell people on supporting the Kickstarter.
yeah.
There's no extra like whatever the case may be to
Mm.
get that money in for your eventual goal. It's like, no, you're like, if you want the book, here's the book. You're
Yeah.
kickstarting the book instead of you're kickstarting the book and an entire merch line of every
Yeah,
possible thing that you could
yeah,
ever think of.
yeah, and I did that with my first Kickstarter, which was Chicovy. Like,
Mhm.
I had a vinyl record, because a friend of mine did a theme song for Chicovy. I had action figures,
That's awesome.
T-shirt prints, yeah, T-shirts, prints, stickers. I don't know, and it just became like when it was time to mail all this stuff out. It was just a pain,
It's
right?
cumbersome. Yeah.
It is, and it's funny. So then, there was this one creator out of Arizona. Oh, I'm trying to remember his name. Max something. I hate myself for this. Anyway, so he's just a kid, and he just does a simple black and white book. I think the Falcon or something. I'll send you the link. I'll find. Anyway, so he just throws up one book, one cover, one reward. That's it. In and out. He makes like his goal is like $500. He's in and out like a bandit, and you get your book like 2 weeks later, right?
That's awesome.
It's
Yeah.
fantastic, and I really, really, appreciate that that kind of that punk rock kind of thing. He just kind of comes out and whatever. So yeah, I wanted to
Yeah.
make sure with this one, I want to keep it simpler, just the books, except for I have a cassette single.
Yeah.
So a friend of
Yeah.
mine did.
How does that come together?
So another friend of mine, Michael Cote. So he's like a multimedia artist, and he just I don't know. It seemed like the last few years he got into making music. And like electronic music, and I just liked it right away. And I never asked him if he had any training or anything, right? But it was just it was cool. And then he made some stuff for me before. He actually contributed these Matryoshka dolls, Russian nesting dolls
Okay.
for
Yeah.
Chicovy. That was one of our rewards,
That's
right? That's how
awesome.
silly this thing got. I had nesting dolls, right? and so and so anyway, so I just said, hey man, do you want to do a theme song? And he was like so excited that someone actually like wanted, whatever. And so he made the theme song, and then for the longest time I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with it. And then I just thought, well, let's throw it on a cassette. Cassettes are small. I could probably put it in a Gemini blister pack with the book,
Yeah.
and we'll be okay. And then, yeah, so then I just, through a friend, he led me on to this place down in Ontario, up here in Canada, that made, they press vinyl. They also make cassettes. And so that was it. So I ordered up
That's
20,
cool.
20 cassette singles. So we got the regular version, and we got an alternate version on the other side. And then, so I'm keeping one. I'm gonna give him 4 copies, and then I only made like 15 available for the Kickstarter.
That's cool. Yeah, I saw those as reward, and I was like, I don't even have a cassette player
Yeah, I
anymore.
know, I know. I got a friend of mine. He's actually Joe from How Do We Get Here. He's actually like he's been going to like I guess like vintage shops or thrift shops trying to find a cassette player.
That's
So I
awesome.
mean, it's like it's cool. Yeah. So yeah, well, like, cause I was almost thinking of going vinyl record again.
Mhm.
But yeah, this is something about a cassette, just some different format, and yeah, smaller, easier to ship too, right?
Yeah, yeah, much easier to ship than a
Yeah,
vinyl.
yeah, and that's the thing too, is if you ever get to this point, you got to really think about shipping, and then your sanity as well, to
Yeah,
organize things. And like I did T-shirts on the last one too,
yeah,
and that was a pain in the ass too, because it's like, how do you package this stuff, right? And then
yep.
and then you got to worry about sizes, and it's
Having
just
the
like,
right sizes and oh yeah, yeah.
yeah, I mean, you get to the point where this is dumb, this is just dumb,
Yeah,
right? So yeah. Anyway, so if I do oddball stuff, I'll just save it for like, for expos and markets and stuff like that.
yeah. Now, for speaking of expos, great transition. Um, do you primarily stay north, like in Canada for the
Right?
expos, or do you like come
Yeah.
down stateside for stuff?
No, not yet. No, no. And I just like up here. I still got to get my passport, to be honest, right? It
Mm,
expired.
yeah,
So, but it's funny, when I signed with Scout, that was one of the things I thought in my head. It's like, oh, they're gonna take me to like San Diego, you know what I mean? That kind of
yeah,
what? No, no, you're on your own, right? Like you're absolutely on your own. And then as you go, the further along you go, you're like, I'm not gonna go to the States. What am I gonna do down there, right? No one's reading this, right? And yeah, so I just sticking it here. So my first out of town is gonna be Calgary Expo in April 25th.
hey,
So
it's my birthday.
yes, there you
It's a
go.
good day.
Hey,
It's a good
hey,
day.
nice. Hey, so yeah, so I'm gonna be down there for the weekend, and then so that'll be my first out of town, and then I'll be at the Edmonton Expo in September, and then I'm gonna probably try apply like for Toronto Expo for next year,
Mm,
and then Calgary again. So I'll just I'll keep it up north for a while, and then we'll see if I get to a point where it's like if people actually want to see me down the States, then we'll figure it out then.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
cool. I dig it. So so again, changing out of the comics realm, because
Mhm.
we got to talk hockey. Stanley Cup starts in 17 days,
Yeah,
right? For the
yeah.
playoffs starting.
April 20th, I think the date, 21st. Yeah,
Yeah, that
yeah.
puts it there.
Mhm,
So your Oilers tonight,
mhm.
and anybody watching this for like comics and punk rock are like, wait, hockey now? This is not a sports thing. We just happen to bond over hockey. And I love talking about hockey because no one here likes hockey. And like it just we have a minor league hockey team, and it seems like no one like they barely fill the lower bowl ever.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
maybe twice a season they get the lower bowl full, not even the upper bowl, just the lower.
Yeah, no,
So
every morning's hockey talk. As soon as I get into work, it's hockey talk. It's
yeah,
just
man,
yeah,
I'm jealous.
it's just how it is, right? We're just that city. Like um I've been an Oiler fan since 1981. Because I remember I was in grade 1, and I found a hockey card, Paul Coffey, who was, like Hall of Famer defenseman for the Oilers, and I,
Yep.
I thought, okay, that's my favorite player, right? And so as a kid, right, and then that was it, and
Yeah.
then just I've been like, I've been there for the heydays, right, when we were like winning cups, and I've been there when we just been absolute garbage for like
Yeah.
20 plus years, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, so this feels nice, but it's funny. It's like everybody seems to have trust issues,
Yeah.
like we have the tools, we can do this, but I don't know, we've seen it play out too many times that I don't know. I've been hurt so many times,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard to trust when you got really thick
Trust.
walls.
It's
And
it's a yeah, it's a big thing. So, but I don't know. I got this weird feeling we're gonna be. I don't know. I don't want to say anything because I'll just like set myself up for disappointment again.
yeah,
Right? Yeah.
yeah, I get it. I mean, I as a kid, we used to have one of those like furniture TVs in our
Yeah.
basement
Yeah. We did
that
too.
would
Yeah.
it was just like we never had a finished basement. It was just sitting down there, and I
Yeah.
one day like plugged it in, like, does this still work? And it had like 3 channels, and they were all
Yeah.
fuzzy, but
Yeah.
one of them had hockey on Saturdays.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I would go down to the basement, and my mom thought I was playing with like my Turtles action figures or something. And I was
Yeah.
sitting there watching like early mid 90s hockey,
Hmm.
like grainy, and I was just like, this is, and I like just it was my secret. I never told anybody
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
until
Yeah.
like much later when my dad was like, "You're in the basement an awful lot." I'm like, "Well, yeah, the TV gets hockey on Saturdays." He was like, "What the hell are you doing watching it down there? Like, come upstairs." Because we just never went to hockey. Well, now I find out like my parents had season tickets to our local team. They like she's told me all these stories of like the Saskatoon team would come down,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
my grandfather would always yell at their goalie, like, "Hey, Saskatoon!" And this is my favorite story because I never would have thought that this was how he was, because he was always very mild mannered and very quiet and respectful to everybody. So imagining him A at
Oh,
a hockey game and
yeah.
B hassling a goalie, because
Yeah.
they sat like 5 rows up from the
Hmm.
ice,
Yeah.
right behind the goalie. So he was just riding this guy.
Yeah.
And finally, at the end of the season, he started in the third period. Hey, Saskatoon! And the
Yeah.
goalie took his mask off, dropped his gloves, and went right to my grandfather. And like my grandmother was like, "Oh my Robert, sit down. You have to sit, stop that." And like got so embarrassed.
Yeah.
And that's my favorite story of him, because it's
Yeah.
like that's so like, and he just like gave it right back and continued riding that guy the rest of the game. And so by the end of the game, the guy
Fantastic.
was like, "All right, man, good game. Appreciate the chips."
Yeah, hockey can really bring out the worst in people, like the
Yeah.
worst. And yeah. It's funny, it's here in Edmonton when when we were bad, uh Oiler Twitter was like the best place you could possibly be on. The humor was so fantastic, like we have like some regulars that post Oiler stuff, and it's just like
Mhm.
they just somehow made the losing feel okay. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? We kind of
Yeah.
sort of end up laughing at ourselves, right? Like, I mean, we criticized everything that the current GM at the time would be doing and trades and stuff like that. And we got, guys that are heavy into the stats, the analytics, and, you know, people that you think are good are not good because their numbers or whatever. It's just like it's amazing how involved it is here.
Yeah.
Like it's like guys take it upon themselves to like, crunch numbers and
Have spreadsheets and
spreadsheets
crazy
and
equations. Yeah.
kind of saying, well, this guy's on a bit of a lucky streak, so he's going to fall off at this point,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, sometimes it takes the fun out of the game. Like I used to get really worked up, like really worked up.
Mhm.
But as I got older, I just like I've gotten more and more calm. So if we're like getting pasted like 3-0, 4-0, and you could tell when they're playing like crap, like
Yeah.
you could like an Oiler fan knows when their team's just not playing like whatever. And so
Yeah.
I've just like been like, I'm just gonna shut it off. I'm gonna shut it off and just go do something, or I'll turn
Yep.
into a movie, right? And then every time I do that, we have the team now where it's like if we're down 4-0, all of a sudden it's gonna be 5-4. We're
Yeah.
just that type of team now,
Yeah.
right? Which is kind of cool. So so I find I usually kind of I will stick around the bitter end on whatever, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's yeah, I love the sport.
Yep, I'm the same. So I got reintroduced, or I refell in love with hockey during the Winter Olympics in Sochi,
Hmm.
when TJ Oshie had that insane shootout run where he took like 8 shootout shots and just kept telling the coach, like, "Put me back in, let me do it again, let me do it again." And like I just fell in love with that game. Like I was up at like 5 in the morning because my
Yeah.
phone was going off. I was like, "What is happening?" And I had all the alerts and notifications turned on at that point, which I don't have any of that anymore. But I like turned in and I watched the entire third period, And
Mhm.
then it went to that shootout, and I was just like, oh yeah, I do love freaking hockey. And
Yeah.
so Ryan Miller was the goalie for Team
Mhm.
USA at the time, and I was like,
Yeah.
well, he plays like a brick freaking wall. Who
Mhm.
does he play for? And he played for Buffalo. And I was like, I have
Koleric, yeah.
family in Buffalo. That's my team. And I looked up
Yeah,
the
yeah.
standings, and they were dead last. And I was like, that's my team. Yeah, that's my.
Yeah, Buffalo, the Sabres, like, I was telling you off camera, like Buffalo's like my number 2 team, right?
Yeah.
Because like I always found there's a lot of similarities between Buffalo and Edmonton, Winter City and
Yep.
and for the longest time players just did not want to go there, right? Edmonton and
Yeah.
Buffalo were probably on that list of like, the no trade places like up there with Winnipeg, right?
Right.
And then it was like the 90s, the late to mid 90s when Buffalo had Dale Hawerchuk, Alexander
Mhm.
McGillney, Brad May, Pat LaFontaine, Grant Fuhrer, who was an Oiler legend, played there for a little bit.
Okay.
Of course, Dominic Hasek came on and all that. And
Yep.
I love that team. I really did. I was just like, I was rooting for them. And, I was like, Buffalo, whenever Buffalo had success, be it like maybe a first round win or something. I always
Yep.
like kind of compare it to like English football, English soccer, right? The Premier League, which I
Yep.
watched as well. And you would have like your bottom 4 or 5 teams, right? They're obviously going to never win anything or whatever. They might
Yep.
be relegated, but if they beat a certain team, there'd be like a riot in the streets, or like
Yeah.
people would invade the pitch because like Fulham beat Chelsea, when Chelsea was a good team, right?
Yeah.
Just things like
Yeah.
that, right? And the passion just for those moments, right? And I felt that with Buffalo too. Like when Buffalo beat the Boston Bruins in oh man, I forget what it was. I think it was to get into Eastern Conference Finals, and it was overtime. Brad May scored the winner. The Buffalo announcer, was screaming "Mayday, Mayday, Mayday!" Right? And I remember
Yeah.
watching it, you just like felt goosebumps, and just like it was it was really something, and of course they didn't. That was basically the height of
Yeah.
Buffalo's,
Yeah.
whatever, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like that's what the thing I like about these like teams. It's like even if they have just a small little bit of success, right? Just how it
Yeah.
means a lot. So like the Columbus Blue Jackets, that really, I mean, I think if they ever win like a round or
If they
two,
can get past the first round of the playoffs,
they're gonna
uh,
like
the
that.
whole city's gonna lose their
It
minds.
it it absolutely transforms a city, right?
Yeah.
Like Carolina, right? The Hurricanes, and
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
like those bastards beat us in 2006, right?
Yep.
But that transformed a city as well, right? In Carolina, like they used to be just like one of those teams you felt like we're going to be relocated, right? Like the Atlanta
Yeah.
Thrashers, right?
Yeah.
But they got a good fan base, they got a great owner.
Mhm.
They're just doing good things. They're just a fun team.
Yep.
So yeah, so it's cool. It's cool with these like these no name teams. I don't like saying no name teams, but you know what I mean, like teams that just have never
Yeah.
won
Not
anything, right?
not the regular, like, dynasty teams when
Yeah, and I
when
mean
they have that
dynasties.
success.
Yeah, and I don't think not really much of a dynasty, really. I guess Tampa was the last dynasty. I don't know if I call them a dynasty. I think they won like 3 cups or something, or 2 cups in like a few
They
years,
won
or
3 in 4 years.
something
They
like
won
that. So I guess,
2, lost 2,
yeah,
and won 1,
the
yeah.
pseudo dynasty, I guess, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like
Yeah.
I come from like when the Islanders won 5 in a row and Edmonton
Yeah.
won whatever 5 out of 6 years, right? So those were dynasties. Detroit in the 90s as well, right? That was
Mhm.
a dynasty.
Yep.
So, but yeah, I've always rooted for the underdog. You know what I mean? Like really
Yeah.
in any sport, right? It's just natural, right? I think most people do that too. They like rooting for the
Yeah.
underdog, right? Like there's people that are basketball, right? Tired of the Lakers. Well, growing up, the Lakers were a good team, whatever. Like I'm a Detroit Pistons fan, right? And
Mhm.
we're like the worst. We're like historically bad this season, and it's
Yeah.
just like, and in my head, I'm thinking, you know what? If you love a team at their lowest, you're allowed to be there when they're at their highest, right? So,
Yep.
um,
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, that's why we had a huge Super Bowl party when the Bengals were actually in the Super Bowl, because it was like, oh my God, it's happening. We're seeing them play in the Super. Like they won not
yeah,
only the first round, they went to the division championship, and then they made it to the actual
hmm
Super Bowl. And it was like everybody
it's
in Cincinnati
yeah,
was just like it like you said, it's a transformative moment
yeah,
when an
yeah,
entire city, like everything was orange and black, everyone was wearing
hmm
Bengals gear, everyone was
Yeah.
only ever talking about the Bengals. And for me, that's not really a huge football person. I was like, yeah, but hockey, guys, like hockey's
Yeah. But it just brings people together, and it makes a
yeah,
new generation of fans. Like when the Oilers made the Stanley Cup Finals in 2006, we were a terrible team. Really. We were just like we're one of those teams that we'd make it to the first round. We played Dallas like for like, I don't know, 5 goddamn years straight, and we'd always
yeah.
lose to them. And but that
I mean,
one
Dallas in
year.
about an hour.
Yeah. Oh, and yeah, the hatred is still deep for Dallas, right? Anyway,
I
so
believe it.
but
Yeah,
but that year it's like, so we had a team of like no stars. Like there was Chris Pronger was our only star, and we had him for 1 year.
mm,
That was really our only star. It was him and just a bunch of plumbers. And then just, we win the first round, second round. By the time like, you get through the second round, you're kind of seeing who's ahead of you. You're like, we could do this, right? All of a sudden and
yeah.
it's funny how just all of a sudden, there was like riots, downtown, and people were setting bonfires on the streets, and we didn't even win anything yet, right? We just made it through like the first round, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
but it was really cool to see, and we still talk about it, and we still talk about how in game one, I think it was Aaron Ward, the defenseman for Carolina. He basically bowls over our goalie, Dwayne Rollison. Dwayne Rollison was like
mm,
a late 30s, basically journeyman goalie that we picked up late in the season, but he all of a sudden played out of his mind. Like he was one of those guys that just like it's just out of body experience, and he was on
yeah.
a complete roll, and so he got injured, game one, the Stanley Cup Finals, and it was just like, ugh. And so it's just like everyone still talks about it. It's like if he didn't get injured, we would have had a Stanley Cup in 2006, right? Because it went to
Yeah,
game seven, and then we just ran out of gas, right? Carolina had just a little bit more talent in the lineup, and
yeah,
I don't know, shit, that stuff hurts. By the way, it
yeah. Oh
hurts when
yeah.
your team. It's like, do you want your team to lose 5-0 or like 4-3 in overtime?
Yep.
I'll take the blowout, right? Just done. Just do
Yeah.
it. Just do it, right?
Because at
So
least then
it's hard.
you don't have 90-minute or 60 minutes leading up to like, oh my, we're almost there, like we're still in it, it's still a game, like we're going to overtime,
Yeah.
we're just like we're a goal away from winning, and then
Yeah.
to lose it at that point. So I'm not allowed to talk about the Frozen Four game where Miami. So my wife went to Miami University in Oxford, and they
Hmm.
made it to the Frozen Four. They were in the
Okay.
championship in like 2011, I think 2010
Hmm.
maybe, and they
Yeah.
lost in overtime. And like you can't talk about it. Like it's still.
Yeah.
I didn't go to Miami, so I'm like I went to Northern Kentucky. We didn't have hockey. We didn't have football. Like we didn't
Hmm.
have sports. So I didn't do any of the sports stuff. Not that I would have
Hmm.
anyway, because I was busy doing broadcasting things. But
Yeah.
so like yeah, you can't, like anytime you mention the Frozen Four, people mention like, oh yeah, college, oh that's the Frozen Four, right? It's like we can't talk about it. It's still just and that was like over a decade
Yeah.
ago. So I
No,
get
it,
it.
it doesn't take
It's
much. Yeah, you know what? People still get upset about the Gretzky trade from like,
oh
'88,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's still sore. I remember exactly where I was during the announcement. I was sitting on the coffee table in our living room at home, and my sister was leaving. Sorry, my aunt was leaving the house. She's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "Gretzky got traded." I'm just like watching this TV in disbelief, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, certain things. It's amazing. It's funny with sports, and it's funny too. People always kind of like, are surprised, like, like if you're an artist or whatever that you like sports, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, people think it's like two different, groups, right? You can't really mix the two, but it's, you know what? I've always enjoyed having both worlds. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I will stop everything to sit down and watch a game, and and then work on my book after, right? So I'll
Yeah.
never, yeah, not too often I'll work on a book while watching a game.
Yeah. Yeah. I usually try and catch up on like my to read pile during intermissions. so so
Oh,
like the first week of Stanley Cup is amazing as a hockey fan, not so much for my read pile, because then I'm like, there is no intermission. Like I go from one game to the next game because during the cup,
oh,
like the Sabres aren't in it. That we're just never in it. I have yet to see
yeah,
them in any sort of playoff capacity. And so
13
because
years. Yeah.
they start hot, and then when everything matters, they tank. And then when they're like, "Oh, we
Yeah,
missed the
yeah,
playoffs," we're gonna play really
Yeah.
well, and then they get every single year.
Yeah,
So,
I know
but
they
yeah,
they they did a bit of a push at the end there this year, and they just kinda like, they just didn't have enough runway. But,
yeah,
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 I first round, man, I tell you, it's just like you right away just get that nervousness in your stomach,
hmm
right? It's like you just sit there. It's amazing how you're focused you are just sitting there on the couch on the TV and just like, and it's like everything is just elevated, like a
yeah,
missed pass or like, the defenseman, gets caught on a pinch or something like that. You're like, oh, and then the other
yeah,
team gets like the first goal, right? And we're notorious for letting in the first goal, right?
yeah.
Um, so just little things like that. And it's just like, oh my God. There are times where it's like it's just not healthy. I could tell my body is not enjoying this, but
Yeah,
you sit
you get
through
the
it
acid
and you hope for the
reflux, and then
oh, that's what it is. It's the acid reflux. And then it's like, and it's the worst when it's like work night and
yep,
we're playing like a team like in California, and games like don't start for us till like quarter to nine kind of thing, right? And it's like it goes
yeah,
to overtime.
yeah,
Like last year, like last couple seasons, we played LA in at least the first or second round, and
hmm
last year it was just like, and LA is a really good team, and they play us really hard, and it could have gone either way. Uh, but Will Ferrell, he went to all the LA Kings games,
yeah, yeah.
and it's amazing how somebody that you love as an actor or enjoy, but you just like you learn to despise a man. And I learned to despise Will Ferrell, because he would like how he would be all like full of makeup,
Oh,
you have
yeah,
like the
yeah.
the the black and white checker and all. You just like,
I
yeah,
thought I
no.
wanted to like you, Will, and now I
Yeah,
can't.
I mean, like I good on him for like, he's a big sports guy actually. Like he's a big Chelsea football fan as well, so he'll fly to
Okay,
England, he'll catch games and stuff like that, and so it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to see. But
yeah.
yeah, I just don't want to play LA this year. I really don't.
Well, here's hoping that they don't. And I guess I'll be an Oiler fan this playoff run because you guys are sitting what second in your division right now. So I
We're
mean, it's
second
not
in
like
division.
we're above
I think,
them.
yeah, 6 points back. We got 2 games in hand, and we play Vancouver once. So there's a chance. There's a chance we can finish first in our division, but it's not the greatest thing because then we'd have to play Nashville first round, and
Yeah,
Nashville is like hot right now, and I
yeah,
can see Nashville just do something just really just chaotic in the playoffs. I really have this sinking feeling about Nashville, um, making out of a
yeah.
round or two, and I do not want to be contributing to that. So
You don't want to
um,
be on the other end of
I
the.
don't want to be on the other end, right? So I don't know. At this point, really, like playoffs are really it's just that's the beauty about NHL playoffs is like
Mhm.
anybody, anybody at any time can do something, because like whoever
Yeah,
wins the President's Trophy, like first place or whatever, it's like it's a horrible record for actually like going anywhere in the playoffs.
yeah.
So that's almost like a kiss of death if you finish first overall. Like Boston last year had like a historic season,
Oh, it
and
was
then
crazy how quickly they fell apart.
knocked out first round, right? So
Yeah,
which is fine by me.
me too. Yeah, I'm
Yeah, I'm
actively
okay.
root against Boston. Yeah,
Yeah, I really don't care for Boston. It's just like whatever. Boston's Boston. It's
yeah.
like anybody can say they're a Boston fan, right?
hmm Yep. Well, okay. So closing. Now that we've talked a ton of hockey, I also like part of that was just for me because I don't get to talk hockey with a lot of people. So it's
Yeah,
good to
yeah, my pleasure.
talk to
Yeah.
someone that can actually like outpace me with it because usually I'm like, yeah, but guys. So all right. So closing. I want to let you get ready because I know mentally you have to prepare for the Oilers and the Stars game. So like, what's for like closing thoughts, as it were,
Yeah.
what would you want to impart on anybody watching this about the sitter?
Uh it's it's not going to go the way you think it's going to go. Once you start reading it, you
Mm,
think it's going to be something, and then it's not. So I kind of want to get that anticipation to people that it's not going to be a straightforward read. There's like a hard twist on this, and it completely changes the trajectory of where the story can go, of what you think it. You think it's like this comedic type whatever, but the tone definitely changes. It does. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. You're right. Yeah. I the first time I read it, I was like, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know anything about it. Which was great because
Hmm.
you didn't give me anything. It was just like, hey, I want you to read this and check it out. And I was like, I would love to. And so I like
Yeah.
reading it. I was like, this is really fun. What's he gonna do? Oh, and like I had to go, but I waited like 2 days and then I went back and I reread it, knowing
Mm,
how like what the twist is. And so I reread
yeah.
it and then I was like, oh, that crafty son of a bitch. I see what he's doing. And like once you
Yeah.
know, there's so much more that I picked up on that I
Yeah.
missed the first time around. And I like that was the fun for me, is it encouraged the multiple readings. And so
Hmm.
so I know it's the first of three. What's the plan for issues 2 and 3? Do you have a plan yet?
Uh, yeah, I do. Well, it's funny because when I had to submit to, when I submitted to Image, Dark Horse, and Mad Cave, I had to have basically it laid out, right, as much as I could.
Mm,
So I kind of sort of made up something for issue 2, and I made up the ending for issue 3. So I kind of left out middle stuff, right? Because I thought, well, if I get picked up, we'll figure it out then, kind of thing. So I
yeah,
have the skeleton mapped out, and I know how it's going to play out, and yeah, yeah, I got it. I got it. I got it.
great,
Yeah.
great. Well, I trust in you. I believe in you, and I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Um,
Thanks very
I
much.
Yeah, I just I think it's super great that you are willing to sit and hang out and talk comics and stuff with me for over
Yeah,
an hour
anytime.
now, and just have some fun. This was super fun for me to just pick your brain and hear you share some of your process and where you've come from and how you ended up where you are. And I will definitely be following where you go from here. So
Thank you.
I appreciate it, and I'm sure and I hope that anybody that watches this also appreciates it, gets some laughs out of it, and then goes and checks out the Sitter Kickstarter, which I'll plug one last time with a little scroller here. And so, just as closing, because I'm not good at closing, I'm a Midwesterner, and so I'll close like we have the Midwest goodbye where I'll say it like 7 times, like I'm doing now, like
Yeah.
talking. Yeah, this is classic Midwestern right here. So I appreciate coming on. I thank you for coming on. I will make sure that I have everything linked for people that are checking out the video to find you on social media if they don't already have it. Is Twitter and Threads your primary? Is Instagram?
Um,
Where should
yeah,
they go?
yeah. Actually, yeah, all three. So just at Adrian Koleric, ADRIEAN KOLERIC. Yeah, just all three platforms.
Okay, perfect. I will update it so that is all there. And then, as always, thanks for tuning in and giving the Long Box Punk a shot to fill some of your airtime. I know that there are way too many options out there for videos similar to this one, but I hope that there's something unique about this one that you can find and share with your friends. Follow along because there is plenty that I have planned coming in the future. And until next time, punks, I'm going to tell you just go read some comics, okay? Go do that. Thanks, Adrian.
Thank you.